In the time it takes to finish one stiff drink, me and TJ are going to figure out what gives him the right to talk about failure. We're going to swap some stories about how we failed, and we're going to figure out if one stiff drink makes you better at opposites. So pour yourself a drink and get ready for this episode of The Boondock Perspective,
where class is optional.
It's yet another carefree Maine evening, and you're listening to The Boondock Perspective, the real Northern Backwoods podcast. Each episode, I'll be sharing a conversation with a topical guest, and we'll share our opinions and our experiences and our stories about that subject. And all of that information is going to pinpoint, a unique perspective. My perspective, of course, being that of some dude that was just kind of living in the boonies for the first 18 years of his life, 70 miles away from McDonald's. So this is my special.
Miles. That's quite a ways.
Aren't
you guys miles. 90 miles from Starbucks? Don't you have a sign in Jackman that says the nearest Starbucks is 90 miles away or something?
I think I actually don't know how far Starbucks is because I don't even know where the nearest one is.
It'd be Bangor, I think.
Probably, yeah. 90 miles from Starbucks.
Well, I saw a sign and I laughed because it said Jackman. I was like, oh, Ethan. Yeah.
Yep, that's Ethan. That's me. So give us a little bit of background about yourself, TJ.
My name's TJ. Went to school with Ethan at Husson, so I'm a NESCOM grad, class of 2017. Woo woo! Work in politics now as a regional field director for the Maine Republican Party. So
that's new.
That is new. I was promoted in March. That's why I've been such a flake lately, is because I literally have no free time anymore. So, but it's a really fun job, so I like it a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of right up your alley. Ever since I've known you, you've kind of been involved in politics a little bit, so.
Yeah, it is a lot up my alley. I was the chair of the Husson College Republicans, so it fit right into my...
Well, maybe 20 years from now, we'll have you on when you're in John McCain's shoes or something like that.
I probably won't ever be there. If anything, I'll probably get out of politics, but God only knows, so.
Well, we'll continue the conversation about failure in a minute. But first, in order for us to determine whether or not one stiff drink improves your ability to, correctly say the opposite of things. There's no real good way to say this. I'm not a very creative person. Actually, just my vernacular is all wrong, so I don't actually know what to call this game. But basically, I'm going to list off words. They're all going to be directions, left, up, right, down. And you're going to quickly, rapid fire off the opposite of what I say. And when you get one wrong, we're going to stop.
It's a good thing this is an episode about failure, because I'm sure there will be a lot of failure on my part.
Probably. And we'll revisit it at the end after this drink is diminished and all the ice is melted, and we will see if you got better at it or you got worse at it.
Alrighty.
All right. You ready?
Yep.
I'm kind of lame, so I need to look at notes because I can't remember those 4 words. Ready?
Yep.
Left.
Right.
Right.
Left.
Down.
Up.
Down.
Up.
You gotta be quicker than this, man. Up.
Down.
Right.
Left.
Right.
Left.
Right.
Left.
Left.
Right.
Up.
Down.
Down.
Up.
Down.
Up.
All right. You seem to get the hang of it. So at the end, we'll see if you got worse at that.
All right. I'm sorry.
So I don't really know where to start the conversation about failure, but it seemed appropriate that was the topic of my first podcast. Mainly because if you've watched the podcast before, you know that it didn't succeed. And that you're seeing this new set, the new microphones, the branded mugs, you're seeing it's rebranded. It's a whole different thing than what it used to be. And
it looks awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Not to toot my own head, but thank you. And it's, the old podcast didn't go well. So I kind of wanted just to have a conversation about failure and what it kind of does to you as a person and how you overcome it and what you can learn. Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing is you've got to learn from failure. If you don't learn from failure, A, you're destined to repeat failure. But B, it would almost be depressing, right? If you failed at something and you didn't try to take a look at what went wrong, then what would be the point of doing it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people are naturally successful at a lot of things, but I'm not. So, I totally understand, the concept of, that didn't go great, but there's a way to fix it so that it does go well. Because you can't just, settle for failure. That's
Yeah.
not
Once you start doing that, you kind of... you fail at life.
Yeah, your quality of production and whatever you're doing diminishes the second you start accepting failure as just normal.
Yeah. But also, as a counterpoint, and you hear this a lot, is once you fail, you have to kind of embrace it. You have to admit to yourself that it happened. You have to grow from it. You know, you have to look at it as positive as you can, even though it's one of the most negative things that can happen to a person.
Well, I mean, the big thing to remember is nobody's perfect and nobody is not failed. If that's a weird way to put that, but everybody fails. So I mean, like, you should not, if you do fail at something, feel like, I wanted to say you should not feel like a failure. You know what I mean? You should not feel any differently than anybody else because everybody fails. So, I mean, by virtue, we are all failures. I don't think it's a good label to give anybody.
That's a t-shirt. By virtue, we are all failures. I think that might be our first piece of merch.
Go for it. I'd love that.
Just TJ Rogers written huge on the backseat.
Take a weird picture of me, like making a funny face, and then put the quote around it. It'd be appropriate.
Yeah. I have a really hard time with failure. Mm-hmm. And to be completely honest, it's because for a long time, I didn't really fail at anything. I had a lot of things that didn't quite go my way, but I never would have considered them a failure.
Well, that's a good way to look at it, too.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah, good. I've already got this wrapped up. I've got failure figured out. We can just call it.
Nothing's a failure. Everything's just different than you expected.
It's perfect.
I hope that's another T-shirt quote.
Yeah.
They're just going to come out of this with a bunch of quotes for T-shirts. That'd be funny.
That'd be awesome. Ooh, yeah, we'll just have a whole failure line.
But that's a good question, though. Like, how do you define failure? Like, is it not meeting expectations? Because sometimes you totally miss what you expected to do, but the end result is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, is that a failure? Did Christopher Columbus finding America, was that a failure?
Oh, that's a good point, oh damn.
I mean, like, he didn't want to find America, but he did, and, like, look what happened.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't want to start any conversation. I know some people actually don't like Christopher Columbus because of all that, but, like, at the end of the day, if you stumble upon a good thing, is it a failure if you didn't accomplish what you meant to accomplish? I mean, like, then your definition gets weird, right? Like, I can tell you, I can give you an example. So we did an event. It was called a National Day of Action for Politics. It was one of the first events I had since I was promoted. So it was in April, early April. And we had a goal to get 20 people here at this event, and it was going to be this big thing. And it rained, and it poured, and they were going to go out, and they were going to knock on doors and talk to people. And we had 13 people show up. About 7 of them were elderly individuals who really couldn't knock on doors. So we had 6 people show up who could actually do what we wanted to do. And we had a goal to knock on like 300 doors, and those 6 people knocked on 300 doors.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how they pulled it off. I was one of the 6 who went out and helped them. But, like, we failed on a lot of things, but at the end of the day, what we ultimately discovered was we had 6 high-quality volunteers there that were just incredible. So it was like, we failed at a lot that day, but at the end result, was it really a failure? That's like a subjective situation, right?
Yeah, well, my personal definition, I wouldn't define that as a failure at all. Like, I guess kind of what I stumbled onto earlier, you found a good thing.
Well, but what I would just explain there is that attendance mattered in this case almost more than meeting that goal. Like, it was a big deal, and we missed by a lot. So, and there were people there. There were 6 great volunteers, but there were 7 people who went there, and I guess they didn't know what we were trying to do, and they were angry about that. So there was a lot of negativity about the event, even though some things went well. So, like, in some regards, it was a failure, but, like, I don't know. It's weird to call the whole thing a failure. Is anything really a failure?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to be on the opposite.
Yeah, you're not going to let me off there.
No, I'm not going to let you off. I don't know. I grew up in I'm not going to say a rough neighborhood because it wasn't a rough neighborhood, but it was a real neighborhood. It was, small town, work or get just shit on. Like you got to have a strong work ethic, and if you fail at anything, like it's on you. We didn't believe in participation trophies. Like if you didn't hit that home run and save the day at the baseball game, you're going to be...
You're not a winner.
Yeah, you're not... people were going to be mad at you for a week that you ran into on the street. So I come from... I feel like I come from a very stern... perspective.
It's kind of funny. I love that perspective. I also come from a perspective similar to that, and I think that's kind of why we probably have similar views. I know I just went on a tangent about what is failure, but generally I think we probably have a pretty close view to what a failure would be, and I generally view it the same way, and I think a lot of people in this country don't.
It's hard to. I didn't want this. I don't want this to turn into a huge political.
No,
debate about
I
the
don't even mean
participation
that in a
trophy,
political thing. I just
Yeah.
mean like in the sense of like that whole like atmosphere of like being hard on yourself. A lot of people have tried to get away from that, and I really think that's bad because I think if you're hard on yourself, you force yourself to improve, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if you aren't you just going back to the beginning, just kind of accepting failure? That's kind of what I mean. It's a very roundabout way to get there, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, geez, accepting failure. I just couldn't imagine being in like T-ball and getting a participation trophy and having somebody call it accepting failure. But yeah, I think if you really broke down the
if your
elements of what it
team
is,
can't win a game and you're 6, I totally understand the perspective that the kid's 6. We don't want to destroy their, confidence and everything. But at the end of the day, they're not really building a winning or a driven motivation there if you're telling them that, like, well, you lost every game, but here is, an award for that. I mean, that is accepting failure, is it not?
Yeah. I was about to say that it's not like they give baseball, like MLB baseball players or NFL football players participation trophies, but on the other end of that,
they're getting paid.
Yeah. So I guess they kind of
totally
do get
different in that regard, but
yeah. I take a quick sip of that. That's so good. Okay, so when we did 12 episodes of this podcast. It was myself and my 2 best friends. And we were super interested in doing it. We were like, we should start a podcast. And there was all this, eagerness surrounding it. And we got pretty passionate about it and trying to figure out what we wanted it to be. And then next thing you know, our ideas became a reality. And it was really cool. And we were having fun with it. But somewhere down the road, 12 episodes later, it was no longer fun. We're all freshly out of school. So we'd all had kind of lives that were playing out. And because we didn't know what direction we wanted to be, we all had our eggs in different baskets. It's really hard to put your eggs in one basket. So, we were working 2 jobs plus freelancing stuff, just trying to make sure we make it, that at the end of the day, we didn't have time. For all 3 of us.
Like, it was more of a hindrance to do the podcast. Something that was supposed to be fun.
Yeah. So because of that, that mindset probably started around episode 3 or 4, and it wasn't until 12 that we admitted, okay, we need to admit this is a failure, and we just can't go on because we were miserable. We were trying to schedule guests, and it was just getting hard because we all had lives, and we couldn't schedule around each other. Some of us worked weekends, other ones worked weekdays.
But would you consider that a personal failure in the sense that, like, what you wanted to accomplish wasn't accomplished, or would you like how would you view that as a failure? You know what I mean?
I viewed it as a failure because I am a person who does not like being bored. I like to do whatever I can for the day. I might like to watch TV at the end of the day and sit down, get my feet up, and play Sudoku on my phone. But that's like an hour of the day. If the other 23, I'm not doing anything, I'm pretty upset. Even in my sleep, my dreams are productive. I'm writing scripts in my sleep. I'm just one of those people. So for me, this is a creative outlet. It was something to do, something to focus my time on, and hopefully at the end of the day, people appreciated it. And what we ended up finding out was, we weren't having fun with it. It was no longer a creative outlet. It became a burden, and people weren't appreciating it. So it was just, in all respects to the word failure, I feel like it was.
Okay.
But it was also something that when we finally accepted that it was a failure, and, I was upset for a week, but at the end of that week, when I kind of came to terms with it, I was so much less stressed.
Well, I like the fact that you call it a failure, but what it brought about was that you rebranded this thing. Yeah. I mean, this looks awesome. So it's not like it went away or anything. It was just it went through a change.
Yeah, but it was a really significant change. Honestly, the only similarity there's several similarities, I should say, between this what this is about to become and what it was for the previous 12 episodes. It's the name's the same. I asked the guys, do you want to pursue this on your own? And they said, no, you can keep it.
Okay.
So I got to keep the name. Other than that, I'm the only thing that's the same.
So it's going to be very different then.
Yeah, we're still drinking on the podcast, but I'm sure there's other podcasts that have people drinking on it. So
Probably a couple. I mean,
yeah, my 6 other podcasts, we drink on all of them. So I don't have other podcasts. That's a poor joke. But that's what happened is, after several weeks of hemming and hawing what to do with this, because I dropped it for like 3 weeks. I was like, this is over. Podcast is done forever. I have the rights to it if I ever want to pick it up. Next thing you know, a month later, I was writing down ideas in a notebook of, we could do this, we could do this.
Yeah.
Maybe try and budget for this. Before we had one table mic that did everybody. Now we've got a mic that does each person.
Yeah.
Different camera setup, different lighting, different backdrop. I really spent some time trying to figure out how I wanted to pursue it, and I didn't rush into it. So now at the end of the day, I don't know if this is going to fail too. But I feel like I have a much better chance at survival.
Yeah, the point I just try to get at when I see everything you've done here is it looks like you took what you considered a failure and you learned from it, right? Like you've basically taken all of that and you've said, well, how could I change it? How could I make it better? Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the point of failure?
Yeah, so that's really the idea of why I wanted you to come on and talk today about failure, is because that's what it is to me. If you're not learning from failure, I took everything that went wrong the last time and I'm trying to change it.
Yeah.
And I think I don't really have a frame of reference for whether or not it's going to work out, because this is episode,
No one ever
1.
does,
But at the end of the day, I think I learned from it. I before it wasn't very marketable. It was the same 3 guys talking and just sharing. Like, nobody wants to hear 3 privileged white kids talk about grandma's cooking on Thanksgiving. Like, nobody wants to hear about it. It's just not intriguing. And our 2 most popular episodes, and it's evidenced by our view counts, were the places where we had topical guests.
Oh,
where
cool.
we had Dominique Lagrange. She's a South African girl who came to school in Maine, which is a friggin' travel.
It's very
That's a
weird.
trek.
I don't understand why she'd want. You know what? More power to her.
Truman said it best. I've been here for 23 years and I can't stand it. I don't know how you moved here from South
I
Africa.
love Maine to death, but I mean, if you're coming from South Africa, you got so many cool places. I don't know, but you know what?
Culture shock.
You know what? I'll tell you this. Dom's a great friend, and I'm glad she came to Maine. So,
Yeah, and she was a blast to be friends with, and she was a blast on the podcast, and it was evident that people liked it. And then we had another guy. He was a military vet, and he's now a nurse, and he went from taking
cool.
lives to saving lives. That's a cool transition. We had him on the podcast again. That's our second most popular podcast. We had 2 topical guests,
and those were the
those
2
thrived.
Okay.
So now it's like, okay, I learned from these other 10 didn't work. These 2 did. Let's take what we did there. You know what I mean? So not much to learn there, but
wow,
I learned.
mean, you did.
Yeah.
I think that goes back to something I hear a lot at work, especially. Everybody will be like, "Well, nobody's perfect, and we're all just learning." And that's kind of like the way a lot of people are going through life. Nobody is perfect. We're all just learning. And you just try to get better at everything you do. That's why I asked, like, what's a failure? Because at the end of the day, I think a real failure for me would be something where you don't learn. Because if you think you did everything perfectly, I think you're ignoring stuff. Because you never did everything right. So if you learn from something, then I think you've got the point of it. I think the only time you really fail is when you don't think you failed. Because you, at some level, did. That's my perspective on it. So if you learn from it, I don't consider it a full failure.
Yeah.
The only time I consider something a full failure is if you don't learn from it, because that means you ignored what you did wrong.
Yeah.
Because nobody does anything 110% right.
That's an excellent perspective. Excuse me.
Well, and that's just a good way to kind of look at a lot of things, is look for what went wrong so you can make it better. Even if everything went really well, look for what didn't go well so you can fix it in the future. I guess strive to get everything 100% right and just recognize that it will never happen, but at least try, It's a kind of weird thing to say, but
I think I saw it was on Facebook relatively recently. Will Smith's been doing a lot of stuff on social media lately. And one of his I'm not going to say earlier videos, but it was like probably about a year ago he posted it. And it was about how you go skydiving and you're terrified for weeks. The whole plan, the whole time you've planned it, and you're just getting more scared and losing sleep. And you get up there and you're afraid to jump out, and they count to 3 and they push you out on 2. You know what I mean? And you're scared up until that moment, and then 4 seconds later, you are having the greatest adventure of your life. And then he says the quote, the greatest things in life worth experiencing are on the other side of fear.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing. If you're not trying, you are failing.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you know what I mean?
Yes, I would agree with that 110%. I mean, I don't agree with the idea that we need to like play it safe and put ourselves in bubbles, because at the end of the day, what are you going to do that's noteworthy with yourself if you just play it safe? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, in the example of skydiving or just taking risks in general, it's a good thing to do if you want to improve yourself, because you can sit around and not challenge yourself, but you're never going to get better at things, which goes back to failure,
Yeah. With risk, I mean, the first podcast, we really didn't take any risk. We were hoping for high reward without taking a risk. We didn't spend any money on any of anything but a couple props. It's a podcast. Why are we buying props? You know what I mean? That was a failure. I bought props and I immediately was like, that was stupid. But I did it here. I did it again. I made a set, and I'm trying to pursue it more as a YouTube show instead of, I in that case, I think I adapted rather than changed. Or there's a small differentiation. I don't think that's a word. Differentiate. Regardless.
Tell us online.
Yeah, but tell us in the comments what the actual word is. But we learned from that, and I learned you got to put a little bit of risk in there if you want the reward. So I dropped, I don't know, $1,000 on this.
Wow.
I don't actually know what the count was because I didn't want to know. But every month I put in $200-$300 in a pile until I could just buy everything.
Yeah.
And then I just bought it all in one go. And I'm hoping that with a little bit more investment and a little bit more quality, we'll have a little bit more. Risk versus reward, and
I think
learning from failure. Just a well-rounded approach.
Yeah.
You have to, otherwise you're done for.
I think you're 110% right. I just love the fact that you guys went out and you made your whole set look really nice with the mugs and the people probably can't see the coasters, but I mean the coasters.
I love these things.
I mean, that's
this is a good time to plug myself because you know who the sponsor of this episode is.
Who?
Me. Is that self-centered? I don't know.
It's self-serving.
You said the coasters. Honestly, I can't believe how good these coasters came out.
Right? Like they look so good.
Yeah, I am selling the coasters. I've got like 20, and if people actually like them, I'm gonna continue ordering them because they are super.
This episode's going to end up like a QVC thing. It's like $8. It's well worth it. Come on. $8.
Yeah.
We've got Linda on the line. She's calling in for a coaster. How are you doing, Linda? I'm doing well.
Get back to the show, please. Yeah. If anybody's interested in the coasters, just let me know in the comment section or message the Facebook page. I'm always paying attention to those things.
Or send an owl.
Yeah. Eventually, I'll have a merch site, but as we build, I got to grow with the show. That's how I'm figuring it. So we're starting with coasters and mugs.
I just think the whole thing looks awesome. You've got your brand now. It's really cool.
Brand. Someone called it a brand.
It's a
officially
brand.
made it. Episode 1. I'm over. It's done.
Well, it's over now. So
the other thing I wanted to talk about was 3 years ago I started a film. Yeah. It was Indemnity. It was a 45-minute kind of thriller flick. Did it with, I think there were 56 people involved. Shot it through winter. It was like the dead of winter, right in the middle of January, primarily outside.
Everybody involved in that deserves like an amount of credit that I don't even know how to give, because to be out in Jackman, Maine, in the middle of January, when it's literally like 10 below half the time, and the wind makes it feel like it's like 20 below or 30 below. My God.
Yeah.
And there were just people there like filming a movie to help, like holding cameras up, like. That takes dedication and
yeah, it was aggressive. There was a fight scene that we shot. We got 13 inches of snow and we shot it in the middle of the night. It was a blizzard. It was the one blizzard that landed. It took us 16 days to find a blizzard, and we got it last day. And we shot through it a pretty epic fight scene.
Yeah,
and got 13 inches of snow in the middle of it, which made for an excellent scene.
But I bet it was hellacious.
Holy hell!
Yeah.
There was a lot of. We'd shoot this 3 minutes. We'd be back in the car for 30. and we'd be warming up.
Oh,
and then
I
we'd
believe
be back
it.
outside.
Yeah, and I bet getting in and out of there in that kind of a storm was just like unbearable. So
For those, I'm going to put the trailer in the description, but all you really have to do is look up Indemnity trailer on YouTube, and you'll find the trailer.
Yeah.
It was pretty successful. I mean,
I love how
I wouldn't define it as a failure. I mean, I'm trying to advertise the movie, so I'm not going to call it a failure. But I bring it up in the middle because I want to talk about it. There was aspects of it that, again, we learned from.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and special movies are like the best example because nothing ever goes 100% right in a movie. I mean, you could watch The Godfather and you think that's the best movie ever, but that opening scene when Marlon Brando's petting the cat's not supposed to be in the movie. Marlon Brando just kept picking the thing up. They were like, whatever, I don't care. So, I mean, like, stuff like that, I mean, no project ever goes without some kind of failure.
Yeah, I
but
get you. Yeah, I mean, it was really fun to work on. I mean, I think it took us 16 months, 17, 16 months from starting to write the script to the end.
I remember because I didn't know if we were going to get to watch it before we got out of
Yeah,
NESCOM.
we had a soft premiere, like a soft open, where we showed it to everybody that was in Jackman, and we showed it to.
Yeah.
And here's a kind of a little bit of a failure story as we showed it, and I could not stand it. I loved the edit, but there were certain things in the soundtrack and certain audio things that just didn't quite line up, and so we changed them a little bit. So the soft premiere was in May, and then we showed it again in November to a much larger audience and changed all. We were like, let's take 5 months and fix it all.
Oh, so that was radically different than the one you showed.
It wasn't
everybody.
necessarily visually radically different. You know,
But
the edit wasn't much different, but it had to coincide with the audio.
Okay.
And some of it, you know, it was just we really wanted that May premiere, so we rushed through the editing, we rushed through through the audio, rushed through the graphics, rushed through everything.
Yeah.
And then we were like, all right. We showed it. Let's
Go
revisit
back
it.
a little bit and fix it.
And you
up.
really don't get that luxury in life.
No, no, you don't.
But we took advantage of the opportunity, and we changed it. And then we showed it in front of, I think there were 190 people at the Gracie Theater at Husson University, where I was just about to graduate, and we showed it. You know, and it's hard to show a film in front of a bunch of film students because everyone's a critic.
Yeah, and
everyone
you're gonna
knows
have
what's wrong.
so many different judgment points and so many different expectations, and you're 110% right.
But a lot of people there considered certain things a failure. They were like, "Oh, this looked wrong. This sounded wrong. That scene was
It's like
bad."
baking a meal for a bunch of chefs. Like, you know that everybody there is just going to be like, "Oh, well, you know, I would have."
Yeah.
That I don't think you can look too far into.
But where I'm going with this is everyone was critical, like hypercritical. Like I would be too if somebody was showing their film. I've been that guy. And they were being critical. But at the end of the day, I said, I got to point out these things that like, you know, that scene was uncomfortable. And I'm just like, there's a couple parts in that movie that people were criticizing that I got to say, you ever think it was intentionally uncomfortable?
Yeah.
There's one scene in particular that right at the beginning of the movie it just seems off. The whole thing seems off. And yeah, there's elements of, you know, directing issues and acting issues and you know, there's evidence of
But
poor
you wanted
stuff.
people to feel.
But we didn't change it because it was a scene that was intentionally supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. And yeah, we probably used poor ways of doing it. You know, we left in messed up lines or dialogue or, you know, things that we could have probably avoided or changed around with the continuity, but we didn't and allowed you to feel uncomfortable. So it's really kind of nice to throw that in people's faces. But no one believes you. Everyone's just like, yeah. Because it's really easy for people to criticize, and it's really easy as a director, producer, or editor to say it was done on purpose. Like, either one's not going to trust the other. So
Yeah.
it's really...
I understand that.
It's really difficult to go through. But I've showed it since then to 4 or 5 venues. You know, every time I show it, I sell like 20, 30 DVDs. That's not a failure. You know, but
Did you show it in Jackman?
yeah, that was first place we showed it.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
where we
okay,
filmed it.
yes.
Yeah.
But that was the May premiere.
Yeah, that was the May premiere.
Okay. I thought you meant you showed it to the cast and crew that were in
No,
Jackman.
they didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
Actually, there was only a couple people that showed up from the cast and crew. They were all going to the Gracie premiere. So.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, there were so many things though. If you could have been behind the scenes and see all these things that went wrong, the fact that that movie came out as well as it did is insane.
Yep.
For a sophomore in college to have made it. That's where I kind of land on it. So no matter how bad it is, and even if it was the worst piece of garbage you'd seen, the fact that from start to finish over 16 months we completed this project that involved 50 working hands. Actually, it was probably more than that. At 50 working hands, we did a bake sale and like a bottle drive to raise money. Like we didn't go through standard financing.
True grassroots.
Yeah, true grassroots funding.
Fundraising. Yeah.
From start to finish, it was fun, but it was unorthodox and it was it was hard.
And I could
So it couldn't be a failure.
Well, I could just tell you straight up, I don't view that as a failure. Partially because you said you learned from certain things, and what went wrong in your view, you already know about, I'm sure, and I know other people probably criticized you, but at the end of the day, you are 110% right. You guys were college students. You organized people to come together to help you, and you filmed something that looks really good. I mean, you guys deserve props, okay?
I will say, from a production standpoint and from a director of photography standpoint, like visually and how scheduling and budgeting worked.
Yeah.
There were no problems.
You guys did it.
Yeah.
For sophomores in college, you guys did incredible.
Yeah, it was a lot of planning. Of that 16 months, like 10 of it was planning. So, but
Wow.
I'm bringing to transition into the, I think where you want to go next, or you could go next, is you recently worked on a documentary that never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the opposite end of like, we easily could have given up on this.
That I would consider a failure because it seems like a lot of the people in it weren't really...
Well, paint the picture a little bit. Like, you don't have to name names or specifics.
No,
but...
I won't name names or anything like that, but there was... So I'll put it to you this way, because I had a good time working on that project. I have good memories, and I don't want anybody to think that I have, like... bad memories or a bad thought of that documentary, because I really don't. What I always get frustrated with about the documentary is that, like you said, it will never see the light of day. We made a documentary, my senior class did. It was regarding one of the oldest cold cases in Maine about a 13-year-old girl, I think it was, who died. She was strangled, and they found her body like 2 weeks later in a barn in Kennebunkport, Maine. So we go down to Kennebunkport and we filmed a bunch of stuff, and it was a crew of like 10 people. And one of the things that I just always felt like was wrong about it was exactly what you said you guys did so well, was planning. And
it's hard to plan a doc.
It is, but part of what made me mad was it never felt like our failures were being fixed or reviewed. It felt like one thing just went wrong right after another and after another. And it felt like when it ended, we were just like all like, oh, okay. We showed up at a motel room at 8 a.m. in the morning. Kyle Waples and I did. I did name a name, but he wouldn't care. Kyle and I,
from what I heard, he was a pretty stand-up guy on that shoot. Like, he was one of the glue that held that shoot together, along with like 3 or 4 of you. So
we showed up at 8 a.m. at a motel that we had location scouted a week before, and we get there and we're like, okay, we're here to film because we had location scouted, so we had planned to come back, and the two of us who were there were not in charge of planning anything. We get there and the lady's like, what are you doing here? We were like, we're here to film. She goes, we're all booked up. You can't film here. So we were just standing there like, and it just felt like stuff like that happened a lot, and there wasn't always a review. And when you're in school, especially, one of the really good ideas is no one's going to be perfect. You're going to have this stuff happen. You got to learn from it. I just felt like some of the stuff we didn't learn from it as much as we should have. We didn't say, well, what did we do wrong? We just got angry and bickered. That was a lot of what it turned into. And it got really negative at the end, and I think a lot of people were frustrated. And part of the reason I think we were so frustrated is because we were never trying to learn from our mistakes. So we were just making mistakes basically for the hell of it. Like, what is the point of doing a project when you start just making mistakes and you're just like, oh, damn. And we saved that shoot. We ended up finding another motel, and they let us film. And so there were things I would say that we did well and we learned from, but like it never felt like we talked about it or that we learned from it in a sense that if we did it again, we'd know the correct thing to do. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I would think if you do something and you fail at it, you should review it and figure out how not to make the same mistake. But I feel if we were to make that documentary, we would be apt to make all the same mistakes again because we didn't really ever talk about the mistakes we made, not in a way that would have been constructive. And I think that that's a big part of it, and that's part of why I got so frustrated. Like I said, at the end of the day, we found a way to work through a lot of that, and then at the end of the day, the project is going to sit on a hard drive and never get seen. So, I mean, it's a bittersweet
It's a bummer.
feeling. Yeah, now you've really brought that.
Sorry.
That was a really tough project.
I
But the
acted
thing
in
is that, well, you acted in
Yeah,
that,
I
so
acted
you know
in
you
it.
dedicated all these
I was
hours.
pretty bummed that it's not seeing the light of day.
But the thing is then I watched the musical that they made this year.
Yeah, that's out. In a couple of weeks, I've got Casey Rankins, the producer.
Those
of that
guys
coming in to
planned that thing so well. They were on point at all times. And when I watched that, I was like, they learned from our mistakes.
That's what I was about to say. Do you think that they learned from
They did.
from you guys?
None of them were, well, very few of them were in the documentary, but they learned from the documentary. I mean, so that's an interesting
cool.
thing, right?
You didn't learn. Somebody else learned.
Well, I think I learned a little, but I learned nothing. I'm just apt to make the same mistakes until I die.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, we never talked about the mistakes we made, and I think if any talk was about it, it was angry, complaining. It was not
It was
constructive.
offensive rather than productive.
But it's ironic to me that, like we just addressed, other people watched and learned from it. So it was like, even though we failed, and we failed in every definition that I could think of, other people took that failure and learned from it. So that's
I can definitely agree with that.
interesting.
I've talked to them too, a little bit, and I might bring it up in 2 weeks. All right, I'll
I
take a note of
would,
it.
yeah.
But to come from, because I did a student film, but I didn't do it with the school's help. I mean, I got to use their gear, but I didn't do it with school approval. Like I went and did what I wanted.
They had to go
Whereas
through
these
the school.
productions were through professors, and you had advisors, and you had funding through the school, right? I didn't have that. So in a way, I'm a little bit different because I didn't have to.
When you say we had funding through the school, the one thing I would say about our project is it's not like the school gave us a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, we still had to go find our own locations and everything.
Yeah, but
I know what you mean, yes.
So
it was different.
So they were a little different. So I don't want to put myself on your level because I feel like it would have been different for me if I had to answer.
Well, that's
to
a
people.
true apples to oranges situation too, because I think you've got 3 projects there, and you've got a very interesting, like yours is in the middle, wherein they said with that musical, we're going to shoot it, we're going to film it, and we're going to premiere it in May. They said if we don't, we're probably never going to see the thing. We said the same exact thing. Ours never got seen. Theirs is they're trying to raise money to put it in festivals.
Yeah. They're going all out with that thing.
Exactly.
And I was there when they premiered it. It was excellent.
It was.
Yeah.
So yours is kind of in the middle, right? Like you set a May date, you did premiere it, but you felt like you wanted to improve it, right? So you spent a little more time, but you still got it out there and premiered it.
Yeah.
So I mean, you've got the whole spectrum there.
We wanted to go to festivals, but there were several. There are, and there still are. There are. The universe is at work preventing us from doing that. Specifically we don't have any copyright issues, but there are issues surrounding. I wish I could name names, but I'm not going to. It's revolving around some cast members that I
think I know what you're talking
I can't
about.
get too.
So
overzealous
you've run
with the
into
thing.
problems there.
I ran into problems,
That sucks.
and
but,
I can't really go much further than I currently am. Which is fine. I did well. I'm happy with what I pulled off. But it is a little bit of a bummer. But I am still impressed because my business partner, my roommate, my best friend, they're all the same person, was involved in
different
that.
people.
Was involved in that documentary, and I watched his hopes and dreams just shatter before the end of that semester, and he was so distraught when that documentary had to come to a close.
Well, and that was the problem with the documentary for everybody in it, was that we started, and I think there was a lot of optimism, there was a lot of excitement, there was a lot of emotions, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But people were excited about it. They wanted it to be good. And the more we went through it, the more we just, I think, figured out, like, stuff was going wrong and we weren't fixing our mistakes. And there was just so much negativity growing. And I think it just grew and grew into the point where by the end of it, everybody was just happy it was done. And I think that you can attest to that.
Yeah.
Living with, your roommate, your best friend.
My business partner.
Your business partner.
You forgot one.
I was trying to remember what the third one was. But you can attest to seeing him by the end of it. He just wanted it done, right? He just wanted to be done with it.
It's a really unfortunate mindset that they had to come on. But it's really nice to hear that something good came out of it. And whether or not it was the students learning from it who are now going to take that knowledge and put it toward their career, or the professors learning how not to.
Learning.
Because I'm pretty sure the same professors were involved in both.
I think they were, and I also think I do remember hearing the professors saying a lot of things like, since our documentary went the way it did, they weren't going to have other people attempting a 45-minute documentary set in summertime when you can only film in the winter. I think they looked at it and they did learn from it. To give a little background context, we tried to film, and the murder happened in August, and we were filming in February and March and May.
It was so cold. I was out in like a short sleeved cop uniform, and I was
There's like
so
snow
cold.
on the ground. We're trying to figure out how not to get snow on the ground because literally everybody was like, "It's not believable that there was that much snow on the ground in August." It was a lot.
Should have just flown to Virginia and just filmed it there.
Exactly. But like, I mean, it is comical to me that we tried to do a 45-minute documentary because even the musical wasn't 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That would have been probably too much for him. So we tried to do 45 minutes. It's set in summertime, but we filmed it in early spring and late winter. And it's just like the comical nature of what we were doing. It just still strikes me. I mean, I remember a story where we were supposed to have a gurney that the body was carried out on, and we reached out to the nursing department, and I said, I can go pick up the gurney and put it in my car. And they were like, okay. So I go to their nursing department all alone, and I'm like, where's the gurney? She goes, what gurney? You got a hospital bed. And I look over, and there's this giant hospital bed. Doesn't fold or anything. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, so I messaged everybody, and I'm walking across the campus carrying a friggin' hospital bed, and I'm like, eh. And I'm texting them, and I'm like, this isn't fitting in my car. I had to leave the thing in the lobby of NESCOM because I had a class. So people are showing up, and there's just a hospital bed in the middle of NESCOM. It's like, so many things in that situation went wrong, but it's also funny to just reflect upon. And I would say I did learn some things, and I hope everybody else did, but that was another moment that happened that we laughed about and some of us complained about, but we never talked about, like, what did we do wrong? That would have been a helpful thing to do. Yeah. And if they did talk about it, I wasn't there for it. And I was, like, the person involved in that whole fiasco. So, you know, it's
Fiasco.
a very... Well, I mean, like, how else would you describe carrying a hospital bed across the Huston campus? Just people looking at you weird, and you're just like...
I know. I don't know. I think to wrap this conversation up a little bit, my film, again, wasn't done with school approval or school help. And I think that one of the reasons why I was able to make it successful is the same reason that the musical was successful. Good people, got along, good communication, no real aggression. I didn't get a crew that was just a class. That you had to work with these people. I got to choose who I worked with. I got to say, no, I don't want him because I know that he has a temper. I got to say, no, he doesn't have enough patience to deal with 16 hours outside in the winter. You know, I got to assemble the crew I wanted and strive for success. Whereas the documentary, you're thrown in with a group of people. It's hit or miss.
Exactly. And I would argue that that's part of the reason the documentary didn't go well is because everybody was given like a role and they were given something they were supposed to do. And I think that because it was a class and you have so many different people coming from different directions, I think some people got thrown into roles they didn't want. And they were expected to do certain things that they didn't want to do and they didn't expect themselves to have to do. So, you know, everybody goes to NESCOM to get video degrees and they expect to use a camera. And then somebody's like, well, we want you to produce. Well, that's like that's not even remotely similar to what video teaches you. It's a radically different skill set, and it's a good skill set to have, but I totally understand being thrust into a project like that and being given any one of these roles and just being like either not prepared for it because it's so different than what you've done, or it's so selective in what you're doing that you feel like you're just not doing as much as you could. Yeah. I felt like those were the two feelings. There weren't many people in that project, I think, that felt like they were doing exactly what they wanted to be. So...
But as long as the underclassmen learn from your mistakes, you know. I think some of the people that were involved in that, I think, worked on my movie.
Oh, I think quite a few did.
So they learned from my mistakes,
but in like
too.
different roles.
In different roles, yeah. They were definitely they were freshmen when I worked with them, and I think when I filmed, I think I was a junior officially. So I think they learned from me, and then they went on and learned from you, from from that documentary, you know, and they went on to do something really cool.
So our documentary is called Entangled Strangers, and I want to write a mockumentary about it and call it Strangling Strangers.
Ow. Dude. I mean, I don't want to say too soon, but when was that? Like 19. When did that take place?
Oh, it's not really about any murder or anything. It's
You
about
said the little girl was strangled.
No, the mockumentary would be about making the documentary.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Good Lord.
I didn't mean
Dude.
that. No, I didn't mean it in that meant. I mean, like...
I expect a public apology. You just failed at a joke.
Damn it, I'm a failure.
Full circle.
But yeah, that was just a funny...
That was pretty funny.
So...
Cool. Well, as I finish my drink...
I'll finish mine so
give
that
me 3
we can
seconds, people.
do the opposites thing.
Heavy gulping. We are going to finish playing our game. Does consuming 1 stiff drink of alcohol increase your skill level when performing weirdly specific things? # we do not condone the use of alcohol for the purpose of self-improvement. So, we need to figure out whether or not you are better at quickly, speedily naming opposites.
Yep.
You ready?
Nope.
Okay. Left.
Right.
Up.
Down.
Up.
Down.
Down.
Up.
Down.
Up.
Right.
Left.
Left.
Right.
All right. You had a little bit of a stumble there.
Yeah.
A tiny one, but that's already just because you were flawless the first time. You were slow the first time.
Yeah.
But you were flawless the first time. So we're going to shove this under Don't Think So. I forgot the Velcro this goes on, but next podcast it'll be there. So, you know, it goes right there. Yeah. All right. Congratulations. I'm going to have you sign your name on that before we get out of here.
Sounds good.
Cool. Be sure to like the Boondock Perspective on Facebook. Check out the Instagram. We post some pretty cool shareable content on there. Some really cool stuff, honestly. We have some new stuff we're posting other than just the podcast. So I encourage you to look, to check it out. Podcast is for free, again, on YouTube and SoundCloud if you want to find other episodes. And I encourage you to go to the SoundCloud and download previous episodes. You can listen to them You can listen to them in the car while you're doing dishes. You know, it's the perfect way to just
I definitely think this is the
30
best thing to listen to while you're doing dishes. Definitely.
Probably. Yeah. Just pull out a glass of wine while you do the dishes and you'll be all set. All right. Have a good one, guys. Deuces.